I just rewatched Deadpool 3, or Deadpool Wolverine, whatever we call it. Deadpool 3 is what I'm going to say just because it's easier than Deadpool Wolverine. I should probably not have that leg on camera. I had a bit of a fall when I was skating. Anyway, overall thoughts. I had a lot of fun when I first watched this in the movies, and I think that's like, it's kind of like Spider-Man No Way Home, right? Where it's about the cinema experience, having that shared excitement and hype, but then you go to watch it at home and it's probably not going to hit the same. That was something that, as soon as I left the theaters after watching No Way Home, I was like, I'm never rewatching this again, because it's just not going to be as good as seeing it the first time with no spoilers in theaters. The moment, not even when I walked out, before I even walked out of Deadpool and Wolverine, I felt the same way already. I was like, this is another Marvel movie where I can't rewatch this. The theater experience is it. And if I watch this at home, it's going to be 10 times worse than I thought it was going to be, or I remember it being in theaters. So my initial impressions when I left was, that was fun. I can never rewatch this. The pacing was really bad. So we'll touch on all those as I go through my notes. So first thing, I do actually like the opening sequence quite a bit, particularly, I think a lot of the little jokes, joking about, residuals. A big recurring joke in the movie is about, making Hugh Jackman play Wolverine until he's 90. They make that joke like 3 or 4 times. And I think it's a good setup right at the start of the movie where Deadpool is playing with Hugh Jackman's skeleton and like making him talk, and it's like, oh, Disney can't get residuals out of me anymore, or shit like that. I like a lot of those meta commentary jokes, but it does feel a bit weird when those jokes are coming out of the mouse themselves, right? Like, Disney had to approve all of these before they started shooting, right? Or if they're improv, then still it would be approved before going to delivery for theaters. So it does take the bite out of it when the mouse is like, yeah, this is good to go. Same with the ending of She-Hulk, which I haven't watched, but I know about the Feige robot joke. And again, it's a jab that on the surface is like, haha, okay, self-awareness, or it's the writers being critical. But then you remember that Disney had to approve this at various stages of development, and you're like, oh, yeah, it doesn't really mean anything. Back to the opening sequence. I like the fight. Cutting to the dancing Deadpool didn't work. For me, watching that, it was like, there's bits of the fight where like he's kind of with the music and there's got that like flow to it, and then it cuts to just the guy doing the dance in the Deadpool suit. And to me, that really killed the flow of that scene. So it really took me out of it. I also think the scene, it overstays its welcome. It's, I wouldn't quite say gratuitous, but yeah, it took a little while to be like, okay, cool, the joke's over, we can like get on to the next thing. And that is something that I have an issue with this movie as a whole. Like I said, I think the pacing is really bad, which is funny because they make multiple jokes about the pacing of a Marvel movie, but then fall into the same trappings of having an awfully paced Marvel movie, which again, we'll get to later as we go. But yeah, that TVA fight at the start, I think, goes on for way too long. But it is a great opener. I think it just needed to get cut down a bit. Then, yeah, we get back to like the context of like the Avengers interview and Deadpool's life being really sad and shit. I like parts of it. I like the Avengers interview with Happy Hogan, but yeah, the rest of it where it's like trying to set up Deadpool's motivations and making it all about Vanessa, but then Vanessa like has 3 minutes of screen time in the entire movie, something like that. And it just doesn't work. I get that if you watch the other 2 Deadpool movies, it kind of, you're already familiar, but it doesn't really get all the way there. It gets part of the way there. And I think the section about friends, where he's having his birthday party and, really appreciative of all the friends that he has in his life, I think that part works well, especially in conjunction with the previous two Deadpool movies. But I don't think that in isolation of this movie, that the whole motivation really works. Particularly the like I want to matter stuff. Like I said, the friends and like wanting to save his loved ones. That's like, it's easy, right? It's shorthand. Anyone can relate to it. So if you just throw it in a movie, literally 99.9% of your audience members are going to click with it straight away. And you don't have to do a lot of the narrative heavy lifting to get them on the same page as the main character. The I want to matter stuff, yeah, they didn't really sell me on it that well. Which is funny because it's also probably the thing they spend the most time on. Like with the TVA fight at the start, I think the Happy Hogan interview also overstays its welcome a little bit. Definitely less than that fight at the start. But like 30 seconds to a minute of just like, okay, we get the joke. We can move on to the next thing. Okay, one of the jokes that was in all the trailers of Wade joking about pegging, and it's not new to me, it's new to Disney, or something like that. I like that joke on paper. But again, like I mentioned earlier, when that joke gets past Disney, Disney gives it the thumbs up, it takes the teeth out of it a little bit. And I guess that also kind of goes into something that I should have mentioned at the start. This doesn't really feel like an R-rated film. Aside from the ridiculous amount of F-bombs, which, oh my God, that was something in theaters. I was like, hello? Like, this felt like a 13-year-old wrote it. And they were just like, I get free reign? It's R-rated? Sweet, I'm gonna put as many F-bombs as possible. And I don't think that benefits the movie. I don't think it damages it that much. But particularly the first probably like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, especially once we've got Wolverine along for the ride. Oh my God, there's a lot of fuck this and fuck that and fuck you, shut the fuck up, a lot of shut the fuck up. And it got pretty one note and pretty stale pretty quickly. Oh, okay, so about 20 minutes in, Deadpool makes a joke about like, oh, this is a lot of exposition for a threequel, which I thought was funny. I think it works because he is getting exposition dumped at him. But then there is so much exposition in this movie. Holy shit. Like an exhausting amount. And again, that goes back to what I was saying about the pacing. There are just scenes where people are talking and saying nothing. Like words are coming out of their mouth, but they're doing, I don't even know if it's fair to call it exposition, because I feel like exposition usually at least gives you, it develops someone's backstory or the greater contexts of the world. And there was just a lot of talking that meant nothing. Sometimes it's fine, because something can mean nothing, but then like you still get like bits of character coming out of that, and you can get an insight into how that character thinks and perceives the world. But it was just like, it was all, I was gonna say Joss Whedon banter, but no, it's not really like that. But it feels like that sort of thing, which I think, it feels like Deadpool banter, but everyone was given Deadpool banter, which then just makes it banter because it's not distinct to Deadpool. So yeah, the exposition we'll come back to, because there's a lot of exposition in this, and most of it doesn't matter, especially like the Wolverine bits where it's like, oh, I'm the worst Wolverine, I got everyone I love killed. They overhype it a lot, and then it's such a nothing story. I understand that like by not showing it, you're meant to imagine as the viewer how bad it is. But then they actually end up telling you, and it's like, oh, I mean, like, that's bad, but like, really? Especially because Logan is an alcoholic in most of his stories already. So having this bad event make Logan a depressed alcoholic isn't really any, like, the idea is that the event is meant to be worse, but then it just kind of turns Logan into the same grumpy alcoholic asshole that he is in most depictions of Wolverine. So what's the idea there? I feel like we missed the mark. All right, so levels of self-awareness. So knowing that Deadpool's like jumping into the Marvel stuff when still getting a lot of exposition, but makes a joke about like Marvel, that place with too many cameos and what is it? Indiscriminate use of variants, which again, good meta joke, good degree of self-awareness of the Marvel formula as it is currently. But then kind of goes in on it and does the cameos and not so much, no, okay, actually, yeah, the army of 100 Deadpools, that's, I would say, indiscriminate use of variants and wasn't set up very well. It was set up by like literally a single line an hour earlier in the movie. So I think it falls into the Marvel trapping of trying to jump the shark in every movie. Like when I watched Wakanda Forever, which genuinely one of the best openings of any Marvel movie. Really strong start. And then it just kind of goes off the rails. And we've got, you know, the start of Ironheart stuff, but we kind of skip all the interesting origin characterization and just get straight to the superhero-y bits, which I'm not a fan of. I like origin stories because I like the bit of, I guess, sort of character study stuff that you do where you get into the head of that character and how they think and their worldview. And I think that's really interesting. But anyway, not the point. Well, yeah, so you're doing the Ironheart stuff. You're trying to do this colonialism narrative. And it did it better in the first Black Panther movie. And then there was this big action set piece. And they were trying to tackle like grief. And yeah, it was just too many things going on at once. And that ultimately made it a very unsatisfying viewing experience because it didn't feel like any of those concepts were really tackled properly. They were just kind of thrown out there. And then be like, yeah, we'll kind of talk about it. And I think particularly the way that they opened it with T'Challa's death and trying to fabricate the purple plant heart thing. I forget what it's called. And I don't know the actress's name, but the one that plays T'Challa's sister, fucking amazing performance in that. But that whole thing of like processing grief, how do you move on, doesn't really get tackled in that movie. And I think with Deadpool 3, it's kind of the same thing of it's trying to be like, oh, finding my place in the world and, you know, saving the people that I love. But on a very, very superficial level. And this is where I find it rides a line of being a perfectly adequate parody or a bad parody. Because you can interpret it as it is doing all these things that Marvel movies are critiqued for, because that's part of a parody, right? You've got to point out the flaws and you've still got to play to the tune of the genre, right? But when you've got, you know, the parody self-aware jokes of pointing out the flaws in the Marvel formula, and then you go in to follow the same trappings of the Marvel formula, I don't like it. I don't think it works. Fourth wall breaking can work, but like, I think this particular combination, no. So yeah, stuff like what in the MacGuffin is that? The whole bad Wolverine thing. Multiple quips about exposition and pacing, which is very funny because the movie continues to be bad about exposition and pacing. Okay, let me quickly count how many times in my notes. So every time that I was like, this scene is going on way too long and they're just dumping pointless exposition, I put a little note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there were 7 points throughout this roughly 2-hour movie that I was like, this is too much fucking exposition. And like the last one is still an hour and a half into the roughly 2-hour movie. So yeah, I think the pacing is really bad. Beyond that, like there's 3 jokes about runtime. And again, it's one thing to joke about that level of self-awareness, but then if you're gonna still do the thing that you're joking about as a form of criticism, I don't know. I think the big thing for me that like rubs me the wrong way is like the first 30, 40 minutes is very much poking fun at Marvel, poking fun at the superhero formula. And then the rest of the movie is just the superhero formula. Like there's very little criticism of the tropes and the story archetypes that they're using. So it ends up feeling like, yeah, okay, you were criticizing at the start, but now you're just doing the same thing that you were criticizing without any additional criticism to go with it. So like makes a joke about the MacGuffin at the start and then doesn't do anything to further critique or subvert the trope of the MacGuffin. And it's like, well, if you're gonna do literally a single line joking about a thing, that's not really criticizing it. There's some stuff in here that I do like, as much as I'm ragging into it. Like the Blade one about, I'm the only Blade there's ever gonna be, and then Deadpool's little reaction. I like that one partially because it was just a good like little subtle joke, but also because there's multiple interpretations you can take away from it. Like you can be laughing at it because there's that Blade movie in development with Mahershala Ali, I think it is. Or you can interpret it as, haha, that Blade movie that's been in development hell for God knows how long is probably never going to come out, and Wesley Snipes is probably going to continue to be the only Blade. So regardless of which interpretation you go with, it's a good joke. Some really bad visual effects through this as well, which look boring, overused to complain about it, but like some really glaring ones, particularly that fight at the start when they're first in the void and Deadpool's sword like clips through his shoulder. I think it's in one of the trailers. And to me, that was very, very noticeable. And then at the end of that long scene where they're fighting the 100 Deadpools, and when they get out of the bus and it's very, very clearly like idle animation from World of Warcraft with Wolverine just like heavy breathing, looking around. Yeah, no, that was very jarring. Very, very jarring. There's more stuff that they joked about, like, where's the intimacy coordinator after Deadpool gets his mind blown up with the Cassandra Nova's very gross hand thing. That was really well done. I liked that effect. It's just like one tiny jab about like, where's the intimacy coordinator, which has been an issue in Hollywood. And for those of you that aren't familiar, intimacy coordinators are a relatively new thing for intimate scenes. It's usually at least a little bit awkward, and you gotta do that in front of camera. So for a lot of people that can be very stressful. And then as with, most people in power in Hollywood, some directors or cinematographers or other actors that are involved in it can be weird and creepy about it. So intimacy coordinators are meant to be there to do a bit of training to like help people beforehand to feel prepared about doing that sort of intimacy on camera. And then also during the scene, making sure everyone's on the same page, everyone's feeling safe and comfortable, because I think it's a level of acting that is beyond most people. Or not beyond them as in they can't do them, but like beyond their regular comfort zone. So completely understandable why we need them. But that one like throwaway joke about it, again, surface level criticism that just could have done more with it. Especially because, okay, like there's the fight scene later in the Honda Odyssey, which we'll come back to specifically the thing about the Honda Odyssey later, but where it's like kind of shot like a sex scene. I thought that was funny. It was well done. But then that would be a good place to put another joke about an intimacy coordinator. I don't know. It just seems like it was something that like, if you were really trying to bring it up as a form of critique, then even just a second joke to like reinforce it. A second different joke. Don't just use the same joke again. But it could have been explored a little bit more, I guess. Oh yeah, Chris Evans getting turned into pig slop truff. I don't imagine pigs would probably eat that. We've watched Spirited Away. Pigs probably would eat that. Anyway, yeah, Chris Evans getting flayed alive. That was the only time throughout the entire movie that I was like, oh, okay, this is R-rated. Jesus fuck. But that was the only time it really felt R-rated. So, right, okay, so the Honda Odyssey. There's a joke at the start when Wade's dealing cars and talks about the Honda Odyssey being shit. Then when they get the car in the void, it's a Honda Odyssey. And then after the fight, well, like the Honda Odyssey kind of fucks. So we get a whole character arc for the Honda Odyssey. But it's something that I've seen in other bits of media that like, maybe it's an American car market thing, because I don't think I've ever seen a Honda Odyssey here in Australia. But lots of people joke about it. Like, what's that D&D? Dungeons and Daddies. And their vehicle of choice is a Honda Odyssey. And yeah, there's lots of bits of media that just like make jabs or have the Honda Odyssey as a punchline that I just don't understand. So if Americans can elaborate as to why the Honda Odyssey is such a recurring joke in media at the moment, that would be very much appreciated, because I do not understand it. So while we're talking about the Honda Odyssey fight scene, just before they start fighting, where Wolverine says something along the lines of, it's God's best joke that you can't die, but the joke's on all of us, or something like that. Genuinely best line in the movie, along with the delivery, which, as much as I feel like Hugh Jackman is phoning it in for a lot of it, that scene, he really committed. I thought that was really good. I was so annoyed as well when they're fighting and Wolverine's smashing Deadpool's face into the radio. And there's that split second where it starts playing This Is the Greatest Show from The Greatest Showman. And I was so disappointed that was the extent that joke got used. Because I thought that was very funny. Like when they released the track listing with like a little bit of funny art a couple of weeks before it came out, and I saw that This Is the Greatest Show from The Greatest Showman was on there, I was like, yes, we can make fun of The Greatest Showman. I hate that movie, by the way, personally. I think it's fucking awful. Anyway, this video is not about that, and I'm not doing one about that because I'm not watching it again. Yeah, so like there's a couple more meta jokes that I like when Elektra and Blade are doing a bit of an exposition dump and getting Deadpool up to speed as to who's in the void, who's been killed in the void. And being like, oh yeah, Magneto was killed years ago, and joking about, oh, this is where Disney gets cheap on us. That was a good joke. Again, I think because that's something that does come up where they repeatedly make jokes about the production cycle and things that Disney cheaps out on or uses as a formula. I think that it works at a surface level. I wish it went deeper. That's the big thing. I wish it went deeper with a lot of the criticisms. Joking about the dialogue coach for Gambit. Funny, because it was fucking awful, and a lot of people pointed that out. But I think that one was very clearly the joke. So for some people that like seem to be really annoyed about how bad it is, I feel like they're missing the joke. But it doesn't seem like it's that many people, but there are people that seem to be missing it. The Wolverine flashback. I get it was kind of necessary to have the whole Cassandra Nova situation resolved, because yeah, they just show her as being super fucking powerful, and then okay, that's it. Don't really do anything with it, other than we just got to slap a helmet on her to stop her having super strong psychic powers, which I get, but at the same time, it's like, why would you use? You know, that's the thing. They don't use her as a joke. They kind of pose her in the same way that we usually pose Marvel villains, and so it was a bit weird to be like, cool, we have this super, super powerful being that is literally just flaying people alive with a snap of her fingers. And then how